I am extremely concerned about young black males.
Mm-hmm.
I'm concerned about a young black male that's in your classroom who is encouraged to be independent, who is encouraged to be a thinker, who then leaves your classroom and runs into someone who does not encourage that. And all of a sudden his behavior is considered belligerent. His behavior is considered resistant. And all of a sudden he is labeled something else when he was a brilliant student in your class. And all of a sudden, 5th, 6th, and 7th grade, he is now a behavior problem. And then all of a sudden he is labeled special education. And then all of a sudden, by the time I get him, his motivation for learning is shot. That's my concern.
That's must be isolated.
Again, to echo what people were saying, I don't want to say that this is like some idealistic or panacea, but given what you're saying, which I think we're very grounded in the failure of the school system and the way that young boys of color have been marginalized, and so that's there in what we're doing. And I think so an important part of what we try to do in that kind of situation and many others, because we're developmentalists and we're like about growth and development and whatever we do, is find ways in all of this work to involve the young people that we're working with in creating the environment for play, so that they're not just playing, but they're coming to see themselves more as environment builders and learning. We didn't talk so much about improvisation, but that's one of the tools we use of how to improvise with what you've got. So I think a very key thing to do with a young man who's going to face a lot of pushback if he's independent and is how to work with what you've got. How to be playful and how to be accepting and how to be creative with the next teacher that you have. And I think people spoke to that. But that's key, I think, to our understanding of development, is that we all have the capacity, in the way that Carrie was describing the little children, to create the environments that we're in. And we don't want to leave that out.
I also was thinking that last response to this, and then let's. But we have our partners, if you will, in human development work here at the Institute is the All Stars Project, which is a youth development project on 42nd Street that works with tens of thousands of young people a year. And that relationship is critical, I think, in answering your question, because what we bring into the classroom with us is and give to young black boys, if you will, is that there are ways and places for them to go to grow that will give them more of what they need to be able to survive in school. And so I think if we were just working in schools, I'd feel more hesitant about my answer, because I don't think the answer for many kids is located inside school. I think the answer is located in them creating a larger, much more worldly life that would involve seeing what's possible in the world and feeling connected to it and having the support they need to deal with some of the things they have to deal with, so that when they walk into school, they have more behind them. And I don't think, even as good as we are, I think if we were just working with kids in schools, we wouldn't have what we needed to give that. So I think that's no small part of what we're able to do with kids, is that we convey that there is a larger world than what's going on in school. And there are other things for you to be doing and part of. And I think that helps in that situation.
Just a couple of tangible things to address the important concerns, gentlemen, I'm sure your name raised earlier, just to direct them head on, address them head on. One is just to be aware of the networks and the flows that your students are going through, and build relationships with the places they're going to end up at the other side, and identify allies, whether you're at the high school end and you're an alumni network that's working in different colleges or different employers, And we do see in the research from Columbia University and other countries and the United States that agency that is strengthened in students can very easily be lost, and that part of the deal is figuring out, helping those students track into channels where there'll be other people to assist them. The second of the four things that kind of came to mind for me is just to go ahead and be realistic and say, well, yes, play is one of the things we're teaching our children. We're also teaching them how to function in our real, imperfect world. And so I think probably among the many objectives you're doing is at times having them do tasks that are rote and command and control, and that you're giving them those skills as well, because they will need those in life. And those aren't mutually exclusive, although there may be folks in the room who disagree with me. I'm just obviously sharing my opinion, but I think you can equip your students with a lot of tools in the tool basket. The third thing I would do, even with younger children, is to directly tell them about the fact that you are teaching them deliberately some things that they may not have already learned, and things that have a potential problem in the future and how they're applied, and make them aware directly of this potential risk, and give them sort of upfront support in dealing with that future reality. And the final thing is, unless you're at a perfect school, you'll have the opportunity to practice this right away, because your kids will hit other teachers in other classes, or maybe it's the principal, or maybe it's the assistant principal, or someone else. And so what you can do is you can empower that student to say, all of a sudden, when they're like, we just had this whole conversation about respect, and I just can't believe it. I just talked to, the principal. The principal totally doesn't even respect me. He's the principal, And then you say, well, you know what? One day you're going to have a job, and I can promise you, all the jobs you'll have, you'll one day have a job where your boss is a jerk. That's the one thing we all get to have in life at one point. So here's your chance early on to play, to practice, to try on the role of how you deal with that. So what are your goals? What are the different, let's act out now. You be the principal, you be the student. Act out all the different ways and see how the different ways you can get your objective. So those are four, possible answers to what I think is an important point that you raised.
Great. I wanted to pick up on one of them and then give you all a direction to try something. So I was thinking, the second thing you said about we don't just play, but we also try to do other. I think one of the most radical things that we're saying is we think all of what we're doing as human beings is performing. There's lots, like the performance of taking a standardized test is as much a performance as the performance of playing baseball and the performance of playing, mommy, daddy, superheroes. And so in some ways, I think one of the things I don't want you to mistake in what people are saying, that these are anything goes classrooms. Because I think that's one of the most misunderstood things about play. For the most part, play is way more demanding than work. At work, for the most part, you know what to do and you do it, right? Or you don't do it and you get in trouble. In play, the rigor actually is in following the rules and being creative. It's a much harder activity to do for children. So in that way, if you walked into these classrooms, the kind of play we're talking about is not usually people rolling on the floor laughing, throwing balls at each other. I think people bring as much of that as they can because there's not nearly enough joy in people's lives. But I think the rigor of having to work together as an ensemble, which I think was the key thing I heard Ray Carmel talk about, what it means to learn to work together as a group, that's hard work for kids. That's like very demanding, much more demanding than sitting down and filling in little bubbles. It's a much harder skill. We dumb down kids with what we think of as work in school. So I just wanted to, in that way, I completely agree with you. I don't want what people are picturing is frivolity in that way. Here's your